Good evening, my fellow Americans. A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. Any failure traceable to arrogance would inflict upon us grievous hurt. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The anchor's coming out, and I'm trying to back her up to the other rope with 2 ascenders. Try to just go.
Hey, Brian, come to me. Come to me. Thank you. It's about to go.
So here's the thing. It's not going to hit her because it'll still be attached to the system. Come up slowly and smoothly. Stay calmer than us, please, for God's sakes. My butt's just like tighter than it was when I started. It's hard to identify if something's failing, right? The entire thing's coming apart.
Yeah.
Those Cheetos?
So I found Nick by scrolling through Instagram, and I came across Nuclear Bunker Living.
The previous week we just climbed up here, all the way to the top and just explored around kind of thing.
That's when I found out that basically he was just doing cool things in a space that usually you would have no access to.
Fire to like deploy a nuclear missile in Moscow.
Wow.
Wait, can I press the
4.5
button?
megaton. Yeah.
Can you push the
4.5
button?
megaton. There's the keys in there.
Wait, so I just fire. He was interested in working with us and actually setting this Highline up. I spent months trying to find the right people and trying to put a team together. When Logan really came onto the team, I think it started to gain momentum.
Bread. Every meal of the day, bread.
And then as soon as Ryan jumped on board, it was like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do it.
So we've got a lot of hardware that's been sitting in the water for about 60 years now, so we're not using any of that. We're gonna wrap columns. We're gonna set up a Highline and just enjoy this cool spot. Right now we're in Denver. We're in a nuclear bunker about 20 minutes outside of DIA, and more specifically we're 150 feet underground. Originally we were invited out here just to set up some slack lines, check out the place. It's not every day you get invited to an old nuclear bunker from the 60s.
We had the last crews leave here in 1965. Back in the 80s and 90s, they were doing a bunch of ballistic testing down in the antenna silo. And then also they were doing NTSB work upstairs. They were blowing up planes and everything too. And then they actually finally closed it down in '98.
So we were gonna set up a slack line in one of the actual nuclear warhead silos. The missile was ready to be launched from that silo, and now we're setting up slack lines over that room there.
It's gonna be all polyester on a really short gap.
Yeah, that was... Why did we have all polyester?
I didn't plan to rig a real Highline in here. I thought we were gonna be on pink tube.
We have like 100 meters of like the least stretchy webbing there on the market.
To my knowledge, this is 180,000 square feet when you combine all of the different buildings together. There's something like 18 different buildings underground here, buried at different depths.
This is pretty much where all the propellants were held and stored before launch, because they weren't actually in the rocket. That's why they decommissioned. Well, one of the reasons why they decommissioned it is because it took about, what was it, 15 to 20 minutes, Nick?
Yeah.
That pretty much it would take to fill up the rocket. That was too long.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun!
Okay, so get this image in your head. You're in like Jabba the Hutt's den. It's old, rusty. It looked exactly like that. And there's these big old sheets that are probably 8 feet by 8 feet just falling from the ceiling. Right above the slack line, but you know, they've been hanging there for like 60 years. They're probably not gonna fall like in the 2 hours we're here. So they're mounted to the bottom side of the doors that open up to let the missile out. They've been sitting here just getting weathered for the last 60 years. So we were coming out here trying to set the world record for the longest distance you can walk on a Highline. You know, you've got all these big time rigs going on. We just had the 2.7 set last year, and we were thinking, well, 4K is about the limit of what you can rig right now with current technology.
Oh! Yep.
So why don't we just make an infinity line that has the orb of exposure and walk 4 kilometers on it and set a new world record for the longest Highline. Since it's like a treadmill, just stay in place and walk the longest Highline ever walked. It's like climbing a ladder, really. Okay, so for those who don't know, the orb of exposure is this. It's basically the blanket rule. Anyone who's a Highliner must abide by this rule. Like, everybody respects it. The Highline that you're walking has to be just as high as it is long. Otherwise, obviously, it's not a Highline. For all my friends getting into highlining, that's jokes. Love the sport, do it your way.
We're trying to figure out how much force this American death triangle we're creating with this infinity line is going to put on the anchors, because that's what we want to measure, even though we're on a big concrete block. Now, I think it's going to, like, more or less 50-60% of the actual person's weight, because it's like sharing and it's kind of at a 45-degree angle. If you're looking at that, let's call it a 45. It might not be 45. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that we've got close to double, so just shy of, like, let's say, like if Logan weighs 150 pounds, I think we're just shy of 300 pounds tension on the line with a rodeo.
And that's tension at the anchor where the line scale will be.
Yes, and that's right here. What we're seeing here is going to be a larger force than the line itself.
Cool. Well, since we're not engineers, are you an engineer?
No.
Okay. Since we're not engineers, that's why we got these. So how much do you weigh?
145.
So it's like 100% of what he is.
I thought half, I thought double, we're both
Yeah, we're both wrong. This is just a little more than what you weigh.
That's incredible.
Yeah?
I don't even
That,
know.
that two guys could be wrong when they thought opposite things.
Yeah, and equally wrong.
Yeah, equally wrong. We're both exactly the same wrongness.
So we had a pretty sick anchor setup, kind of a new technique that I've never tried before. We had these cement columns that we need to wrap, but there was also something on top of the column, so we couldn't just do a scorpion right over the top and have that be our anchor. So what we ended up doing is 2 span sets wrapped, scorpioned up over the back, and a scorpion, just really quick, is where you girth hitch, but the tail of the girth hitch is coming out the backside away from the highline, and then you wrap it up and over so it looks like a scorpion tail. And we had 2 of those coming up and over so that it would wrap around that thing that's blocking us on top and create our master point.
Okay. What are you doing?
Moving the line. We are no longer limited in highlines for how long you walk, by how far you can rig, but by how strong your buddy, the infinity line anchor, is, and how dedicated he is.
Why walk into beautiful mountains and move from side to side when you can stay in place?
The line is at like this angle and you're trying to put your foot on it flat, and you just can't do that. It's so steep. There's lots of ways you can go with it. Needs a little bit more slack science before it's got the stamp of approval. Being in this space is a stark reminder that, like, war is real. We're privileged enough here in the United States that it's not something that I think about often, and we don't have to live with the repercussions. But being here and like feeling the weight of this place, the fact that there was a nuclear warhead that could kill millions of people, it just really makes you think of how lucky we are to be here. And my heart definitely goes out to all of our friends and family around the rest of the world who might not have these same privileges.
It gives me hope, like the silos that are used today, the fact that there's still nukes, like that, that's even an option for countries, that someday they'll be decommissioned and that other people will be slacklining in them. Keep your stoke alive. Hope is like the one thing you can hang on to, because it always gets better. Don't know how long it takes, but always gets better. This is a really special treat to be here. And I thank the owners and the people who facilitated this to happen.
She was having a grand old time and goodness! Stop looking at the camera. That was almost a good take. Okay.